Well, hello there again, friends and colleagues. This is Sam Collins with Cairo Secure. It is my privilege to be with you, and let's cover a little bit that's going on. I've had a lot of offices recently contact me. Sam, I'm getting these letters. I'm getting them from Medicare. I'm getting them from Anthem and others, all about coding and the ratio of coding. And is this something we should be concerned with? Is this something that I'm impending to be in trouble? Does it mean I'm going to be audited? What does it mean? Well, what it means is that people are looking and you want to make sure that you're compliant. I'm always going to start from our end of compliance. What is compliance? Making sure we're following along to fit within the standards of practice, whether it be by the Board of Chiropractic, under state, federal, Medicare, and other rules to make sure that we just fit within that. And it doesn't mean it always has to be exactly, because there can always be circumstances, but we do want to see, is there anything that makes us stand out? We're always, of course, afraid of the red flag. Am I going to get in trouble? And what I want to be careful of is you getting the hyperbole where people try to get you excited and afraid, like, oh, I'm going to get in so much trouble. So let's go to the slides. Let's talk about this type of compliance and what we need to do to assure that we're fitting right within the ratios. Now, as always, I'm with the H.J. Ross Company. We do seminars and programs. Take a look at our site, if you will. But let's talk about audits. Is it something you really should be concerned with? Well, I always say don't be paranoid, but be mindful. Like, have you done a compliance office in your office? Have you done it yourself? By example, if you're billing a 99203, what are the requirements for that code? And if you're not well aware of that, it might be something you may want to look at to make sure, do I fit the right parameters? But for the most part, it's really about just making sure the information that you have in the file matches what you've billed. And that's what you're mostly going to find when dealing with these types of issues when you get them. So I'm not concerned about an audit as long as the information is there. And frankly, as much as you'll hear the excitement of they're auditing everyone, it's not as prominent as you think. And I'm not saying this for you to just be relaxed, but just be mindful. It's more about the excitability and getting everyone to do something more than to focus on, let's just do what's right. And that's what I want to make sure. So let's talk about a coding compliance audit that you kind of do on your own. What things should you be looking at to make sure you don't fit this? So being aware of code usage is critical to compliance overall. It can easily fall into a dangerous place. What if you just treat everyone the same way all the time, same thing? Well, frankly, I won't say that's necessarily wrong, because what if you see a lot of the same conditions and same levels? Let's face it, as a chiropractor and you see low back pain and you're seeing the same types of diagnosis, wouldn't you expect kind of the same type of care plan, maybe some longer or shorter? So just be mindful that certain times there can be things that could fall into that. That doesn't necessarily make it wrong, but do we fall into a dangerous path to where there's an overutilization or higher than expected usage? So let's talk about chiropractic manipulation. We're all aware of the codes. Obviously, there's the 1 to 2 area, 3 to 4, and so on. What I want to place an emphasis today is talking about, how do I choose the right code? When choosing these codes, it's not about your style or your manipulation. It's about both things, your style or your adjustment, but what you're coding. So the code is not determined by your technique. By example, if you're a diversified type provider, I bet you probably adjust full spine most often. However, the code you may bill is going to be based on the diagnosis, not the number of regions you adjust. Because remember, they must match. So whatever is the lesser, if you're an HIO doctor and you diagnose all 5 regions, but you only adjust C1, you get a 4.0. And the other side of it is, if you are a diversified provider and you diagnose only cervical but adjust all 5 regions, it's still a 4.0. So it's going to be based on both. So keep that in mind. However, something interesting to look at. Now I'm going to show you here. This is from the Optum Health chiropractic portion reimbursement policy, which, by the way, I'm a member of the Optum Health Coding and Reimbursement Committee. And I want to be clear with everyone, that doesn't mean I get paid for it, but I sit on an advisory panel and have for 20 years on the coding and billing of chiropractic. One of the things I think it's important to note, and I highlighted in red, is the use of the codes. Obviously, the expectation is it's diagnosis. Well, diagnosis means a patient has an area of complaint most often. So you would expect to get a 4.1. You would expect a patient to necessarily have 3 regions of complaints. And I would say, yeah, that's probably correct. However, take a look what I've highlighted in red. They're indicating that a person could have validated diagnosis for 3 to 4 spinal regions and complaints, but notice this, validated diagnosis for 2 regions plus 1 or 2 adjacent regions with documented soft tissue findings. So I want to be careful. What if a patient comes in and has a cervical and thoracic complaint? And as a consequence, on palpation, you're finding a lot of significant findings in the upper lumbar spine, tenderness, loss of range of motion, and so forth. Would that be enough to code a subluxation and potentially, instead of being a 4.0, a 4.1? Certainly, possibly. I don't want you to think to stretch that every time, but there certainly could be reasons. Now, I will tell you, my father was a diversified adjuster, and he pretty much adjusted full spine because he really based a lot of things on the old building blocks. And I certainly think that makes a lot of sense. I have a friend of mine that always adjusts extremities based on the same principle. Nothing wrong with that, and I think clearly acceptable and reasonable. However, when it comes to billing, your technique or style is not the determination, but what you're diagnosing. So notice, even for a 4.2, they're saying the same thing. If there's an adjacent area. Now, if a person has a cervical complaint, what's adjacent? Thoracic. So even if you found something thoracic there, that would not turn that to a 4.1. And this is what's occurring where we're getting these types of ratio outliers. The typical expected ratio for CMT, now this is based upon Medicare, though the 98943 doesn't fit. The expectation is probably it's about 50-50 between 4.0 and 4.1. But frankly, even Medicare indicates that a 98941 is probably going to be the higher valued or the higher percentage of use. And that makes sense to me because of patients often have multiple areas, not just isolated to one. So it wouldn't be unusual to say that maybe more than half of your patients are 4.1s. So when you look at this ratio, you should fit somewhere in between here. Now, a 98942 should be pretty small. I've seen some say as much as 8, but I kind of go less than 5%. And I'm not against a 4.2, but imagine a 4.2 requires direct diagnosis for all 5 spinal regions. I mean, what did the patient do? Fall flat on their back off of a ladder? And I'm not saying no to that, but you can see that would be a pretty hard reach to have that as a common code, but it's certainly possible. So if you're fitting within this, you're fine. Now, a 98943, they're indicating maybe 20 to 30%. I've seen some say a little bit less, but what I would say is if you're billing a 4.3, make sure the patient has a complaint to that area and specific findings to show manipulation. Don't just have the idea that everyone gets extremities. If you always adjust extremities on every patient, that's more your style. And I'm not saying anything wrong with that, but without a direct diagnosis, you're only correlating it. I'm going to say no, but again, I'm not saying against it. So make sure if you're a full spine adjuster, it's more about what you're diagnosing than necessarily how you're adjusting. And so this brings me to what's happening quite a bit. As part of our network service, we help people dealing with coding and billing issues. So boy, I've been getting a lot of these. You'll see this one is dated February 22nd. And you'll see here it says claim analysis for chiropractic manipulation. So let's blow that up a bit. And you'll notice here it says Anthem, meaning the whole company. This is across the US. This is not isolated to any one area. I've had letters literally from all 4 corners and every place in between the US. And it says here, we embrace the opportunity to foster collaboration with providers to ensure proper coding. Okay. So they're saying, we're just taking a look. Does this mean they're auditing? Not necessarily. But it says here in second paragraph, we reviewed the use of chiropractic manipulative treatment as part of our ongoing claim data review for claims that's been dated between September and October of the year following. And it says, fourth paragraph or third paragraph, the review indicated your average utilization of the CMT codes, particularly 98941 and 4.2, is higher than expected. So that means somehow your numbers are way above. Now, I would say take a look in your own practice. If you're doing electronic billing, I'm sure you can do this. Just look to see what is the percentage. Now, again, if that percentage is about 60% or so, I'm going to say, okay. Even at 70, I go, that's a little high, but probably okay so long as you have a reason, because notice what it says. We are aware of many factors may impact the coding of your chiropractic manipulative treatment. So could you be a provider where you do have 90% of your patients with a 4.1? Well, that's possible, but is that really probable? And is it practical? And I'm not going to say no to that, but certainly if you're doing those numbers, I'd want to take a look to make sure, can I really justify it? So take a moment to do that. Don't just assume, oh, I'm okay. This letter does not necessarily mean they're auditing, but if those numbers remain high, do you think eventually they're going to go, we want to take a look? Because notice here it says, please respond via email to provider team at your earliest convenience, so they can figure out, hey, what are you doing that's different? It doesn't mean you can't have reasoning, but they're kind of looking at this as a way to say, we're not saying we're going to audit, but we're kind of giving you a warning to take a look, and we're not saying you're wrong, but you better be able to justify. So Medicare also has begun this year, and they do this every 3 years, send out comparative billing reports about the usage of care. And you'll notice here it says the provider uses modifier AT with chiropractic manipulation codes from 4.0 to 4.2 to indicate acute or active treatment. And they're saying here your percentage is significantly higher. Now, I'll be very honest about that and say, to me, that makes no sense. And here's why. What are you going to bill to Medicare but corrective care? So therefore, what is going to be the highest percentage of ones that you bill to Medicare would be an AT. Now, let's remember, could a patient get maintenance care? Of course. And if they sign an ABN, would we bill to Medicare? Maybe. Remember, the ABN gives two choices. And how many times does a patient give you a choice to say, no, I don't want to bill Medicare? Therefore, you may not be billing any of the maintenance care because the patients have indicated no. So I find that statement kind of erroneous for Medicare. But what I have a little bit troubling for this particular doctor is this. You will notice literally every patient this doctor sees is a 98941. Now, the fact that it has an AT, I'm okay with that. It's corrective care. But you're going to tell me that you never had a patient that has a 4.0, that everyone's a 4.1? This one concerns me. Now, I'm not saying no to this, but I'm going to say it's very unlikely. I had one I dealt with not long ago. With ChiroSecure, of course, you have audit protection. And these are some of the things that we deal with because I'm one of their experts on dealing with when you have an audit. By the way, check your malpractice coverage. Do you have audit protection? Because we're going to help support you for this. Now, this particular one I haven't worked on because they haven't gotten an audit, but I've seen a case where a provider did something like this, and they found that roughly about 40% of those 4.1s were incorrect. So they were indicating that it should have been more about 60 once they dug in through the notes. So I'm not saying no to this, but check to make sure. Do I really have a person with a 4.1 every single time? Now, if you told me, Sam, I only deal with people that have 3 complaints, they never can come to me with 2 complaints, I'll go with that. They never have 1. But you can see here the odd nature of that. So that's something that kind of does stand out to me that I would be a little bit mindful of if I get a report of this nature. Because you're going to notice here, they're saying, hey, it's much higher. Well, obviously, because every single patient. Now, the thing they do indicate here, though, is the percentages of what you bill out. Now, you're going to notice here, they're saying your average number of visits is 22, which is higher. The expected average in your state is 10.7. Well, again, that's what I may not be as concerned with if I have the medical necessity, the significant diagnosis. Remember, Medicare does coding for secondaries based on short, moderate, and high-level care. And if you have patients with disc degeneration and those types of things, as is common for Medicare patients, might you see someone 22 times in a year? I think so. So that part I'm not as concerned with. What I'm concerned with is just the flat-out usage. Can we dictate that this patient always had 3 regions that are diagnosed, that are complaints? Because I'm concerned that that's probably a bit on the high end. But is it just about CMT? That could be part of it. Here's another letter, and you're going to go, wait a minute. This looks like the same letter. It is. Except what is this one pointing out? Ooh, we reviewed your claims, and we find you're using modifier 59 higher than your peer group. Okay, is that something I'm going to be necessarily concerned with? Maybe, but maybe not. Why do we use modifier 59? We do that to indicate when we're doing a separate distinct service such as myofascial release, manual therapy, or massage. And is that completely reasonable? You bet it is. However, let's compare. In order to be paid for that service when we put a 59, what do we actually have to do? There's 2 things. It's not just putting the modifier, but what else do we need? You're right. We need to have a separate region. So this one actually concerns me a little more. Can we support when we do the 59 a lot? I'm not saying no, but if someone looks, did you always do a separate region? Now, if that's been done, I'm clean. I have no regard for that whatsoever, but please be mindful. If this comes up, they're certainly going to say, hey, let's take a look at your chart notes. Let's see if it's a separate area. That same office I talked about that they lost on the 98941, they billed out about 400 massages. And unfortunately, literally 90% were reversed because the massage was never in a separate region. And that's one for hard for us to fight because it's real clear about that separate region. So I'm not against doing and using 59, but make sure for the codes that are needed, particularly massage, manual therapy, they are separate regions. But this is their way of saying, hey, there's something that may be up. But notice again in this 3rd paragraph, We are aware of many factors impact us. So they're never saying it's absolutely wrong. And here's another one you're going to note, man, same letter, but what does this one talk about? Specifically, the use of exercise. Now, this one to me, I find frankly laughable. Why? They're saying you have a higher incidence of doing exercise. Well, isn't that what the guidelines say? If you were to read the guidelines, whether it's ACOM, you can go back to Mercy Conference for that matter, or even ones from Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield in there, they indicate that patients should have more active care. So what is the one thing that should be combined with manipulation to really have the patient with the best outcome? Honestly, it is exercise. So I have no issue. If you have higher utilization for exercise, I have no issue so long as you have a good purpose. What is it? Restoration of strength, flexibility, endurance, restoration of their ADLs to pre-injury status. Obviously, we're going to move them to more of a home-based program, but I have no issue here. Now, the good news is with exercise, does it need to be a separate area? No. Does it need a modifier? Nope. What does it need? That it was done. So all this comes back to, if you've done a service, document it. So with exercise, what would you document? Well, what were the exercises? How many sets? How many reps? If there was weight involved, and what's the face-to-face interaction and the outcomes? So again, some of these, I wonder in a way, are they just sending letters out to make everyone go, ooh, I'm afraid? I have a tendency to sort of believe that. I'm sure they've got a metric that shows when they send these letters, providers cut back. Now, I'm not saying that you should necessarily cut back. I'm saying it gives you a chance to look. And if you're doing something improper, maybe you need to make adjustments. Don't set yourself up to be waving a red flag above yourself. But at the same token, if everything is justified, I have no issue whatsoever. And that's really what I help and make sure that you do and ChiroSecure does. You're here to have the best practice to give the best outcomes of your patient and provide the services that are reasonable and necessary. So if you get a letter like this, I wouldn't panic, but I would say take a moment to look and go, let me see, do I have something that falls out of the norm? And if it does, do I have the justification for it? If you do that, it's no issue. So be careful of the hyperbole and getting all excited. Remember, HJ Ross is here for you. We've got our news section. Go to our site. We're always going to update things there for you. No surprise billing, other types of issues. We offer a service where I become part of your office. You call me, email me, fax me, we even Zoom to make sure you're getting paid. Here's going to be the issue. Have someone that's on your team as an expert to always make sure you have compliance and can avoid this, because it's not as complicated as people make it seem. And we want to make sure, if anything else, you're having a good and fun practice. So I'm going to say to all of you, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be with you. I'll see you next time. This is Sam Collins, the coding and billing expert for ChiroSecure and the HJ Ross Company. Be good, everyone. Be healthy.